What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bees for Build. In today's episode, it's all about the fuel system. We're upgrading our fuel system like crazy. Deatschwerks has sponsored this fuel system, and we have absolutely everything coming in brand new. So we got upgraded injectors, upgraded fuel pumps, new fuel filters, new fuel lines. Everything's gonna be brand new. We're gonna run it all to the engine. We're gonna integrate it with the Lamborghini fuel tanks, and we're gonna integrate it with our standalone ECU. It'll be a good one. Stay tuned. Deatschwerks has sent us just an insane amount of good stuff for this. There's so many AN lines and fuel lines, and everything that we need is in this box. Another cool thing that they did too was they built us kind of like a map of what connects to what, which AN filters to go upsize, downsize, etc., etc. So what we're gonna go ahead and do now is find that map, start laying things out so we know, we kind of have a catalog of everything, and we can start making a game plan of how we're gonna install this thing. Since they gave us a map, it was actually really easy to kind of just follow the map, but here's the basics of it. We're going out of our fuel pump up here, we're going to fuel filters right here, then to the Texas Speed fuel rails. Then they both come down, both the ones after they go through the fuel rail, come to our fuel pressure regulator right here. After the fuel has been all regulated and everything like that, whatever it doesn't need, it's gonna run down our return line, which goes back into our fuel tanks. It's a pretty simple little path. So that is what does that stuff right there. It's all AN fittings, it's all like super nice, and it's gonna be really good. So now we're gonna go ahead and get started. And we're gonna get started in the world of our fuel pumps. That way, once we get this all ready, we can throw that in our fuel tank, and then we can install those on the car and keep going. So feed line like I just showed you, return line is right here. We're gonna be upsizing this return line, so hopefully we'll have the right stuff. So what we need to do is go ahead and pull these feed lines off, the return line off, clean the top of this thing up, and then we gotta swap out these fuel pumps with our new Deatschwerks fuel pumps. So I got this thing cleaned up, and I got one of the pumps out, and we ran into our first kind of big issue. So we thought that our Deatschwerks pumps, that's this one, was just gonna kind of slide back into this housing, and we're gonna be able to utilize this. Unfortunately, if you look at the size of the old pump versus the Deatschwerks pump, there's a pretty big difference in size, and that's why we get, you know, a lot more fuel out of this pump. So this hanger isn't really going to work with this, but it has a lot of really good stuff, and it seats well in the Lamborghini fuel cell. So we still want to utilize this, but we're going to have to you know, do some Bees for Build style modifications. So here's the game plan. We're going to go ahead and cut this off of the bottom. We're going to get rid of this. We are going to cut out of just some stock aluminum here. We're going to cut one piece that's going to hang out up here, and it's going to have a circle that this can slide right through. So it's going to slide in like that, and then we'll have another one that's smaller so it can't keep on sliding, and it's going to catch it at the bottom, and that's going to be placed right here. Cutting, welding, new pump placement. All right, we're ready to start welding. So Oscar just, so we went ahead and built this piece right here, and then we need to go down a little bit further because we don't have nearly the thickness that other piece had. So we're gonna weld on this extension right here, and then we'll weld this into it too. So Oscar's gonna do the first weld, and then this is a pretty easy weld, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the second piece of it. All right, so we just got finished with our first set of welding. This is the Oscar side, and then this is, I did the weld on the top there. It works, it holds, but it's not as pretty as Oscar's. So the next thing we gotta do is attach the fuel pumps to this. So they're gonna sit in this thing right here, but they also need to be like attached so they're not going anywhere. So we're gonna design a method to do that and build it out right now. we just finished the construction on this bad boy. So you can see that we went ahead and built like a tab slash spacer on this thing that will go ahead and space it out so the pumps sit like really nice and parallel in there. And then we're gonna zip tie around them to keep them in spot. Now we're not gonna actually use plastic zip ties. We're gonna use, as soon as we're ready to go, we're gonna put these stainless steel zip ties on there. They're nice and really strong. And that'll hold them where they are in place, and then the bottom holds them from slipping down, slipping through anywhere. So that's a nice, you know, kind of really nice parallel installation for those. So the next thing that we got to do is take our AN fittings that were coming up here, and they're going to go down. We're going to run the rubber hose to the top of those, and then we're going to modify our electrical plumbing as well to be able to connect up with these Deatschwerks 400s. All right, we are done with our fuel pump setup. So we got our Deatschwerks fuel pump in our nice little hanger with our AN fittings ready to roll out the top, and this will stick into the Lamborghini fuel cell, and the bottoms will be at the right height as well, which is going to be great. So we'll go ahead and get that placed into the Lamborghini fuel cell now. All right, we got our fuel tanks ready. So you can see we kind of refinished the backside of this one since it was a little messed up. We might, when we go ahead and paint the rear chassis, we might actually do a little bit more painting, just kind of depending on how it starts to look. We don't know how much of this is all kind of crazy visible and whatnot. So here's what we believe the way that they had it wired up before would probably be that stock Lamborghini wiring went here. They ran two of these guys over to this side as a kind of venturi to pump the fuel basically from this tank over to this tank. And then they ran their high-speed fuel pumps through here, and then you have vents over here. That's my guesstimate of how this went. So what we're gonna do moving forward is most likely we're going to disable the Lamborghini fuel pump, so that won't pump anything anymore. And then we'll cap these, and we'll cap these. And then our return line is right here, and that will have a venturi system on the back. And what that means is it's venturi system is like something flows by it, and then it can suck from the other way. So the return line, fuel will be flowing into the return line really fast. And then what we're gonna do is use the venturi to suck from the bottom of that tank and bring it over into this tank. So that's how we'll make sure that we get the fuel all over to the fuel pumps. By the way, if you didn't know, if you have a fuel system that's like that, or anyone that goes over a drive shaft or stuff like that, it's how they all work in cars. It pumps from one side over to the other, and then it pulls from one side. So then these are our two feed lines right here. So we're gonna go ahead now and pull the engine out, engine, trans, whole unit. We gotta pull that all out, and we will place our fuel tanks. Okay, our tank's ready to go in, so you can see that we have our AN bends all done here, and we want to attach the hose while it's outside of the car because it's going to be a really, really tight fit. So we're going to be attaching our, this is stainless steel braided line with nylon on top of it, fuel hose, and we're going to go ahead and attach those while the tank is outside of the car to both of our feeds, and then we're going to go ahead and throw the tank into the car and map out where we want to put our fuel filters, then run our lines that length and chop them and get them ready to be installed in the fuel filter. Figured out our fuel filter placement. So it's going to run, so this is the Deatschwerks bracket, this is the Deatschwerks fuel filter, by the way, and we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of modifications in here, right in this little pocket right here, kind of do it about at an angle like that. It's going to run in, so lines are going to come out of here, they're going to run down in some nice safe space down here around the engine mount, and then out into this guy right here, this bracket. So we're going to go ahead and install the brackets on both sides right now, and the fuel filters. right, we got our fuel filters in. Oscar's already down there running the fuel lines. So you can see where we decided to go with mounting. It's a pretty cool little spot, just right next to that adapter plate from SLC. So what's going to happen is that line down there is going to come out of the fuel tank, run around in a safe spot over to this right here. The other one's going to run under the engine mount to a safe spot to right there, and then we're going to come up and it'll run into our fuel rails that are going to be right about here, and then we do 2 into the fuel pressure regulator and back to the return, and that is the full loop for the fuel lines. So Oscar, like I said, is routing those right now, and then we're going to pop them off and do the fittings for them. All right, while Oscar is under there, I'm jumping back into the hackathon that is trying to get this Lamborghini to turn on. Now, a lot of you guys said I should go to Sam Crack's key fixer genius ECU wizard of destiny. You know what? No, that's not going to work because we know that the BCM2 needs to talk to an ECU, and we don't even have that wired up. So I jumped on eBay and I ran into these guys, Mullins Auto, and I called this guy up. Super, super cool. Already knew about BS Rebuild, already knew about the project. Now he has a bunch of auto parts from some wrecked exotics because he's been parting out a couple Huracans there at Mullins Auto. So I want to give them a huge shout out. He gave us an insane discount on all of this stuff, which is great. We got 2 keys, we got an ECU here, and we got a BCM2, and they're all from the same car. He just gave us everything that he could from the same car. He's saying, dude, you're crazy. I want to see you make this work. I think you can do it. Give it a shot. Here's all this stuff. Huge discount. And then while he was at it, he threw in the suspension components that we need for the back. So now we have a complete suspension and we can get this thing to be a total roller as soon as we want to. So I want to give him a huge shout out. I'm going to link Mullins Auto in the description below. He also has a YouTube channel and he's torn down the car that these parts actually came off of. If you want to watch that, it's a pretty cool process watching a car become parts. Anyways, links in the description. So now what we got to do is we're going to grab our wiring harness that we bought. We're going to walk it over here. We are going to go find this wiring loom. I'm going to cut it in half at that point, and then I'm going to start connecting all these wires up so we can connect to the ECU. Oscar just finished the first of our permanent lines, so you can see that they run out of the fuel cell, down here, under there, and into there, and then on the other side, it does the same thing right there. So these Deatschwerks fuel lines are awesome. Let me show you what they hooked us up with. So say you got your fuel line like this. This is our 6AN fuel line right here, and you want to put a straight connector on it to go to 6AN threaded. They make it really simple. You just unscrew this outer jacket and then you slip the hose into there, and that's why they gave us this awesome little bench stand for the vise so we don't mar up our parts at all. So you throw this in here, clamp it in the bench, then or like that, upways. Shove your hose into there until you can see on the bottom that it's all seated, and then you go ahead and stick this guy in the back. This isn't a one-handed operation. With it all in the vise, and then you start to tighten it down and it will insert itself into the hose, and then you have this really, really nice like one-piece fitting on the end of your hose. So you don't have to have any of those crazy like hydraulic hose presses or anything. It's easy, it's DIY, you can do it. And you can find it all at Deatschwerks on their website, which is link is in the description below. They also gave us this awesome guy right here so we can crank on these fittings and not mar them up on that side either. So it's a pretty awesome little setup there. And obviously you guys know that we're running their, you know, fuel pressure regulator, we're running their fuel pumps in this build. Everything fuel related is all coming from Deatschwerks. So huge thanks to them for sponsoring this build, and fuel filters as well. All this stuff is available on their site, and it's just top quality stuff. So we got the lines run from the fuel filters up into our fuel rail, and you can see that we got the intake manifold on. We're just mock fitting everything. So they run up with a couple 90s and then come in with their 45s. And now it's time to mount the fuel pressure regulator. Now, mounting this is pretty tricky. It can't get too close to the exhaust and some other things, and we don't want any of the lines to need to get too close to exhaust either to prevent fire. I think that might have been how this car burned down. I'm not really sure. So here's our Deatschwerks fuel pressure regulator, and you have to keep in mind up here you have to run a line from a boost signal. It needs to have absolute manifold absolute pressure map to rise the fuel rate as you get more boost. So anyways, we can't fit it behind the engine back there. We can't tuck it away anywhere. So right about here is looking like the sweet spot. So Oscar's gonna build a backing bracket for the other side, and then we're gonna go ahead and install that by drilling a couple holes, and we'll send nuts and bolts through the carbon fiber into a backing plate to mount this somewhere around right here. All right, the fuel pressure regulator has been mounted. That's a great spot for it. And we got these lines running out of the fuel rail coming into this. And then now we just need to have our return line that runs out of this, but we're missing one AN fitting. So I'm gonna pick that up tomorrow. And then this is actually the return line that runs into the fuel tank. So we'll install that, plug that into there, and then this whole system will be done. Except for we need injectors. So that's what Oscar's gonna do next. We're gonna go ahead and take this thing off of here actually, because it'll be a little bit easier, and install the injectors. Let me show you those injectors. These are our injectors that Deatschwerks gave us. They are 2200 cc injectors, and you can see that we actually have all the flow data for each injector at the different pulse rates, pulse widths, and duty cycles and stuff like that, which is pretty dang cool. So yeah, you can see we're over 2200 on every single one. They're all in the same kind of range. Awesome stuff. So now let's go ahead and get them in our fuel rail. All right, a dozen or so wires later, and I've got every single wire that leads itself to the ECU kind of reattached to this harness. So all this stuff plugs into the ECU. So now it is time to give this a full-on test. Here's the configuration we're using. BCM1, that's the Burnt-to-Con one, that's the one that actually came from this car. BCM2, that's the new Mullins one. ECU and wiring harness on the back, that's going to be the wiring harness that came with this car, Mullins ECU, and then the keys, Mullins as well. I think as long as there's nothing coded to the dashboard, this will work. Fingers crossed. All right, we got something new when we added power. We have our emergency blinkers on, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or whatever, but here we go. Trying this for the first time. No love. Let's see. All right, we've got injectors. These are our Deatschwerks injectors hanging out inside our intake manifold and our fuel rail. That's so cool. I'm so stoked to see that. So tomorrow, I'm gonna go ahead and get that line, and then we're gonna figure out how to get a bunch of fuel in here, and we're gonna turn it on and pressurize the system. It's gonna be fun. All right, it is day 2, and I went ahead and got our 8AN to 6AN adapter piece, the only piece that we were missing from yesterday. So Oscar's gonna go ahead and run our last fuel line. That's our return fuel line coming out of the fuel pressure regulator. Just to give you an update on what I was doing yesterday and what I'm doing today, continuing on, I've been working on that wiring bundle right there, and it's not working out great so far. So I'm gonna do some more tests. I'm probably gonna even run over to the other Huracan and test some modules and stuff like that. I'll let you know in the end. I want to give you an update on this side of the world and what I spent so many hours on yesterday. So I identified every single wire that goes to the ECU, and then I kind of mended them all together, and we gave it a quick test and it didn't work. And then so we took the BCM2 and we took the key fob and we went over to the green Huracan and we plugged it in and it didn't work. Now, it's getting really close. It unlocks the doors, it does a bunch of cool stuff, but it didn't work. So there's not that many other computers. There's that computer, but we already know that that computer can be the wrong computer in the car because we've tested that out as well. And then there's the 2 ECUs. I believe one will work, very firmly believe that one would work. I think it is the screen. I think the screen does more than just the screen. It's also paired to the key. So what we did was I very kindly asked Ty, the junkyard guy that hooked us up with the ECU and the keys in the first place, if we could borrow the screen that also came from this car. He said, yep, no problem. He's shipping it out to us. And I think that's going to be the final part of the puzzle. So I'm going to pause on this till for a while. I know I've kind of bored you guys to death with us trying to figure out how to turn the Huracan on. But after we have that screen, we'll be able to do a lot of different tests and narrow down exactly what the other parts that we need, if we need anything else, are. But I really think it'll work because we've essentially changed every single computer out in the car that does anything and has a brain that could talk to the key. So that's the update on that. I'm going to work on tying in the ECU to our fuel pump trigger so we can turn on our fuel pumps when we turn the car on. We got the wiring system run, so the ECU now triggers our relay block that sends full power to our fuel pumps. Now, we need a little bit of fuel. Oscar tied the 2 fuel tanks together, and then we had a small fueling mishap where Oscar took a shower in gasoline. There's 2 flaps in here. There's two. Anyways. We're gonna try again. We gotta put a ton of fuel in this thing because we gotta get it to the point where it's spilling over into the other one, get a bunch of fuel on the other side, and then we'll be able to pressurize our fuel system, check for leaks, see what our fuel pressure is at, all that good stuff. All right, we've added 7 gallons of fuel, which we're hoping is enough to get the fuel from this tank over to this tank and up to our fuel pumps. Fingers crossed on that one. And then, like I said, we wired this into the ECU. We wired the relay into the ECU. So you guys remember, relays are kind of like gates. Like you send a power signal to it and it opens the gate for something else. And that's what these really high gauge wires are that run through these fuses and these fuses right here. It's this high gauge wire that runs all the way to the front to the battery. And when you open the gate, it sends the power down through into our fuel pumps that are down in here. That's kind of like the safe way to do it so you don't burn through switches and other things like that. So what we need to do is take this high gauge wire right here that came with the car, came with the build from the last guys. We're going to attach it to our power distribution block right here, and then when we attach power to that, as soon as we click the as soon as we turn the ECU on and it says fuel pumps can go on, it'll hit that relay, open up that gate, send full power to those fuel pumps, and we will hear them run. All right, we got the power done in the front. Kyle's going to be applying power when we say so, and for the first run, what we're really looking for is obviously, so fuel's going to come out of here, it's going to run through the system, run through our fuel rails to our fuel pressure regulator, which is going to regulate the fuel pressure and then send whatever's left down into the fuel tank. Now, a couple things we're going to be checking for is leaks. We're going to be looking for any leaks in the fuel system, and then the other thing that we're going to look for is to make sure that you can see Oscar's already got the Allen wrench right here, and we're going to be making sure that we can adjust the fuel pressure so it stays below about 60 psi. If it goes over 60 psi and we can't lower it back down, then we need to work on our return line a little bit more. All right, Kyle, go ahead and apply pressure. Applying power. Power. Well, that didn't work. Back to the drawing board. Oscar, what'd you do wrong? I'm kidding. I did something wrong. I'll fix this. 1 second, guys. All right, I changed some. Kyle, let's go power round 2.
Power round 2.
Didn't change enough. All right, back to the drawing board. Okay, we accidentally fixed the thing, which made our fuel pumps go, and
our injectors are leaking.
Our injectors are leaking. Sad face. Oscar, you didn't install our injectors upside down, did you?
No. They're on right.
It looked like all of our injectors were leaking. That's strange. Where is it leaking on that side of the rail as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not all of them.
All right. Whoa, that's a lot of gas that went down there. Well, we have some things to look into. And once again, the shop's covered in gas. Oscar had to wear a Texas Speed shirt today. His other shirt is soaked in gasoline. All right, you know what? Troubleshooting? We're troubleshooting away. Unfortunately, I'm guessing if every single injector is leaking out of our fuel rail, that we have like a pretty big problem. Meaning, like it's something serious. Wrong size injector for the fuel rail or something like that. But let's look into it. Let's find out what's going on, and we'll figure out what the solution is. All right, changes have been made. So before we were running the injector with the plug side kind of on the inside, and if you look at the rail, it actually is kind of curved towards the inside a little bit. So that might have not let us kind of seat as far down. Would have looked really cool for wiring purposes, but I think we got a little bit better of a seat here. So we flipped those around, as well as we just kind of like hammered them down a little bit harder to try and make sure everything is in. So Kyle, if you will do the honors, let's add power. See. All right.
Ready?
Yep. All right, we're building fuel pressure and we don't have leaks, and we're doing good. We're at 30 pounds on the gauge, so we're just gonna take a second now and check for leaks. Oh, we got one injector leaking a little bit, but that's nothing compared to what we had before. So we'll go ahead and stop and fix that up and then try again. We're listening to fire-related songs in the shop today, just in case we spark anything. All right, this is fuel pressurization test number 206. Kyle, let's add some power. All right, we have got no leaks, and we are fueling at about 30 PSI, so we're gonna need to double that. Let's get an Allen wrench and we'll adjust our fuel pressure and see how we do.
We're going to 60, right?
Yeah, we're going to 60. I think we're supposed to be at like 59 in the end, but 60 will be a good starting point and we can adjust from there. Come on, baby. We should probably over test it. You want to crank it up till, you know, maybe like 70 and just make sure we're good in case we have any spikes or anything. So that's about 59 right there. And you know, we're not leaking. It would be spraying if it leaked. You know, we'd see it on the ground or we'd see it somewhere. But everything's dry, everything is good. So we're just gonna go ahead and crank her up a little bit more just to be safe side. Sometimes when you first hit your fuel pumps both turn on, so that's 70. You know, you're gonna overpressurize. All right, that's about 75. I think that's fine. So yeah, fuel pressure can spike when you first turn on. But yeah, we're looking great. So that's 60 pounds of pressure. That's where we need to be. We have a fully plumbed fuel system. Fantastic, and it looks beautiful. You guys gotta agree. I mean, this looks really good. And one other thing that I would like to point out is we are in the engine bay right now, sitting right next to the fuel tank, and those fuel pumps are insanely quiet for the amount of fuel pressure and the amount of fuel flow that we're getting. That's really, really good. I've had other fuel pumps from other brands where you're sitting inside and you just hear this drone. It's like, the whole time it's on. Like, we won't even hear this when we're inside the car at all. And that is an insane amount of fuel pressure. It's enough to power this massive engine that we have coming with the turbos, getting us past 1,000 horsepower. That's crazy for it to be that quiet. And we have like open vents and stuff that are making noises. Like, that's a very, very quiet fuel system. Deatschwerks is the best in the business. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this one. Thank you so much for watching. Huge thanks to Deatschwerks for the awesome fuel system sponsorship. You guys could see, like, our installation was so fast. Everything was so easy. They gave us this awesome engineered map of how to do everything. top-notch, good quality parts. Huge thanks to them. Guys, there's gonna be a link in the description. If you have any fuel system needs, please go click that link. In the next episode, we are gonna start this engine. We're gonna top it off with a little bit of fuel. We're gonna install our clutch, and then we're gonna hit the start button, and it's gonna start. It's gonna be fantastic. So tune in for that. You won't wanna miss it. Hit the subscribe button so you'll be reminded and all that good stuff, and I'll see you then. Peace!